Welcome back to the Skids Giggles Podcast. I am Pascal, chief instigator of this show and your host. I'm joined by my co-host and the resident engineer, the yin to my yang, the Calvin to my Hobbes. Bryson, how's it going today?
Hey, Pascal. How are you doing? I'm good. How are you?
I'm also very good. Thanks, man. As you know, we've had quite a few overarching themes on this podcast already, from the more serious ones to the maybe not so serious ones. One of the more interesting discussions we've had relatively early on already was on sustainability and green credentials, in air quotes, of bike brands. One of the names that we came across a number of times in our conversations was Pembree, and that's why we're looking forward to sitting down with the brain behind the brand today. Phil, welcome to the Skids and Giggles podcast. How's it going today?
Really good, thank you, mate. Much appreciated. Thanks for inviting me on.
We are also joined by the three-time Skids and Giggles podcast champion, the fan favorite and star of our first 3 episodes, James Drew.
Why are you laughing?
How's it going today?
Why are you laughing? I'm all good. Good evening, everyone.
James is also the distributor of Pembree pedals here in Switzerland, so we thought he could bring an interesting perspective to the conversation. But before we get to that, let's just get down to some business and briefly do our spiel with the social and where you guys can find more information about the Skids and Giggles podcast. We are currently most active on Instagram, where you can skid right into our DMs and follow along at Skids and Giggles. And you can find our website with all the relevant links and info under the URL skidsandgiggles.com. Also, if you guys like what we're doing and want to know what's up, just give us a follow on Spotify. Hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever else you listen to great podcasts. Finally, sharing episodes you enjoy on your socials or a heartfelt 5-star rating on your favorite platform goes a long way in helping us reach more people like you. Well, we've heard quite a bit about James already and on his different personas and on the bike and off the bike. So let's hear a little bit more about Phil. Maybe to start with, why don't you tell us a little bit about what kind of mountain biker you are?
Well, I guess the vast majority of my mountain biking experience is downhill, but prior to that, I did a lot of BMX racing. But more recently, it's trying to find time to go out mountain biking. There's some local trails that I go out with some of my friends, but as with any new startup, finding the time to go out on the bike is something that I really do need to do more of. But yeah, that's where my main experience. Downhill mountain biking and kind of enduro. When I first started, enduro wasn't even a thing. So, but my main area of expertise, if you like, is downhill and enduro riding.
Oh, nice. So back when mountain biking was still called mountain biking.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
Nice. But you said it's a startup, Pembree. So why don't we talk a little bit about the vision of the company and what kind of your background a little bit, and how did you get into all of it?
Well, the company was incorporated in October 2019, but the origins started, I guess, about 20 odd years ago. After a successful final year at university, I designed a pedal that won an Audi Design Foundation award. The idea with the pedal was to solve a problem back in the day. Clipless pedals had zero float, and so I designed a pedal that used magnets that would allow kind of unlimited float that would solve the problem with individuals with bad knees and bad hips, and that, as I say, caught the attention of the Audi Design Foundation, which I don't think actually exists anymore. But off the back of that award, I went on to design a flat pedal. I got a strange obsession with pedals and bearings ever since. So I designed a flat pedal because that was the pedal that I liked when I was downhilling. And it was modest success. Some guys still contact me about those pedals, even though I was probably looking at about 17, 18 years ago, and they're still riding them, which is amazing. But I didn't know anything about running a company at all. It was a real eye-opener. I'm a designer by trade, but there was no experience running a company. And unfortunately, the yin to your yang is that you've got to be able to balance both elements. And so I stepped away from that company and learnt more about industry, how businesses run, cash flow, profit and loss, those weird and wonderful things. And I guess with always that burning desire to do it again. And then about 5 years ago, I thought to myself, I do need to refocus and try and get back into what my dream was, which was to run a company making mountain bike components. And so started to, as I say, refocus back towards that, got back into manufacturing, learnt a lot about UK manufacturing. And then at the start of 2019, there was a bit of a light bulb moment. I met a guy on a holiday who was he was guarding a bike. It was a £3,000 or £4,000 bike, and so I approached him and we started talking. And obviously, I've got my obsession with pedals, so I started to talk to him about his pedals, and they were plastic. And he said he absolutely loved these pedals. He said he goes through about 3 pairs a year, and throws them away every time. Smashes them up, throws them away. And that was that kind of that eureka moment when I just knew I had to do this. And so fast forward a little bit to October 2019, I incorporated the company. Obviously, I've been working on designs for my whole adult life, and decided to give it a go, with a view to launching in April 2020. My production machinery arrived on a Monday, and then the following Monday, the UK lockdown happened with COVID-19. So that's how I got to where I am today.
Oh, nice. So, a good spanner in the works at the beginning is usually a good stepping stone to hopefully more success down the line. So, how did those the lockdown, of course, ended at some stage, and how did then the first couple of months go for you?
Well, the lockdown actually was a bit of I guess a benefit. Everything slowed down, and it allowed me to really hone the prototyping of the R1B pedal, and get everything set up within Pembree. The launch of the company obviously was delayed to August 2020. And the whole of the summer just went really quickly for me, but got everything set up and ready. So it was kind of a bit of a godsend, really. And then once the company had launched in August 2020 with the R1V, the plan was at that point literally to do an R1V pedal and then go into a stem that I'd designed. But the response to the R1V was absolutely phenomenal. And so I had a rethink and brought another pedal design that I'd had on the shelf, the virtual shelf. Brought that out, and that's where the D2A pedal came from, and that was launched in October. And ever since then, it's gone from strength to strength. Things are going really well. Really pleased.
But the sustainability, that has always been a core part of the company, or is that something that has just developed over, let's say, the first couple of months?
Well, I think the sustainability piece it's wider than that. So it was actually born out of when I was 18, I tried to make build a bike from UK manufactured components. And I simply couldn't get anywhere near it. There was a few bits and pieces, some hope breaks, and there just wasn't a lot, and that really kind of opened my eyes to local manufacturing. As I developed into my adult life, then my interest in where things were made, how things were made, what are the effects of them being made, started to build. And really going into starting Pembree, it was never a choice. It was always going to be a responsible company with as much made by me as possible. And anything that couldn't be made by me had to be made as locally as possible. And that transparency, I think, is something that is lacking within the industry. So it was always going to be a huge part of the company.
Okay, but you entered, let's say, a relatively populated, if not saturated, market with pedals, let's say. And how do you position your brand in this market where you're kind of coming into something that's already well established and developed? You're coming in with a relatively premium product, and then on top of that, you add this kind of sustainability package. Do you find in this corner of the market it's almost a benefit to include the sustainability piece, or is it you need to justify your existence next to someone else that charges exactly the same price?
I think for me as a mountain biker, the product has to speak for itself. It has to stand up and be better than our competitors, the other brands within the industry. I think as a company that puts responsible manufacturing at the forefront of everything I do, if we were making pedals or whatever it might be, and people were looking at it and going, yeah, it's not as good as others, but it's a greener product, I don't think I'd be doing myself a service, and I don't think I'd be able to grow and develop the company as I want. It has to be a good product, or it just won't stand up. And we'll just be one of those brands that just kind of plod along. The sustainability piece, or the responsible manufacture, however you want to talk about it has to be part and parcel of what we do. And the approach to Pembree has always been a sustainable, responsible approach. So it's something that customers have really been crying out for. A lot of people come to me, a lot of customers come to me and say, I love what you're doing. I wish more companies would do it. And that's ultimately what I want to try and do. I know it sounds really kind of cheesy, but I want to change the world one pair of pedals at a time. That's what I want to do. That's the goal. And so we need to start buying in a much more responsible way, and the power's in the customer's hands.
Fully agree. But you say you want to change the planet one pedal at a time. But of course, if you can't share, are there plans for other products or other components already? You mentioned the stem.
Yeah, and I've been designing for 20 odd years, so I've got a whole sketchbook of ideas which I've jotted down over the years, and the challenge that I've got is capacity. So it would be very easy for me to approach a manufacturer in the Far East and say, this is the design, send them a 3D CAD model and say, can you make that for me? And that's for me the easy way to do it. But that's not the Pembree way. I need to control that procurement of manufacturing services. Ideally, make the component myself, and that will slow our growth down. It absolutely will, but it's a responsible growth. and it's an organic growth that's more important, and I think that will build a stronger foundation for a future of Pembree products. So yeah, things like stems, there's chain devices that I've designed, seat clamps. These things are the finishing kit. Someone said to me the other day, finishing kit, and that's ultimately the area of expertise that I've got. So absolutely, what comes first? I don't know. Is the honest answer. I've got 3 other pedal designs that I could bring to the market. But what's really important, like James as an example, if I keep bringing out more products, then the support and the ability to manufacture our current products will start to come down, and so I don't want to do that. So slow and steady.
Mm. Yeah, that would have been my next question, is kind of like how you're managing that growth sustainably, right? Because that's of course the other side of the coin, right? So if you're really successful as a business, then of course growth is almost inevitable, and either you turn down business or you need to find ways to satisfy the demand. And have you thought about, how you're going to tackle that challenge?
Yeah, I think
if it hopefully presents itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's not count our chickens. But I think that the key is to, and I know this sounds a bit kind of counterintuitive, limit the number of customers, so that we can grow together in an organic way. The amount of territories in the world, the amount of countries that are in the world that do mountain bike is quite phenomenal, and it would be quite easy, dare I say, to go out to these countries and say, let's find a distributor in whatever country it may be, and then there's another. But I want to be able to develop and build our brand in an organic way, so that nobody's waiting too long for pedals. I know some of the challenges within the industry at the moment with very, very long lead times, and I don't want to be like that, because I think this is our opportunity to grow and shine and start to build our brand within these countries. I am talking to Haas CNC about purchasing other machinery. Don't get too excited, James. But we'll see. These purchases are big capital expenses, and so I have to be confident that there is going to be the demand. But as things are, I think there is.
Okay, well, that's a nice segue. You talked about distributors and working with partners. So maybe if you could also hear a little bit from James, kind of the perspective of the distributor, the partner in Switzerland here. How maybe can you talk a little bit about how you first hear about Pembree, and how did the collaboration come about?
I first heard about Pembree from Piga, actually, the bike brand that I distribute. I believe Phil and Duncan know each other. And yes, it was Duncan who, because I built the global website for Piga, and he wants to have Pembree pedals on the platform as well, available for purchase with a frame. And that's when I first heard about it, and it was Duncan who actually said, would you be interested? Do you want me to put you in touch? So I was quite interested. I have quite a few other pedal brands in my lineup, so I'm always always wary about having a lot of products which shall we say, compete with each other. But when I heard about what Pembree was doing, being 100% carbon neutral, the fact that they're manufactured in the UK, not somewhere in the Far East, was definitely a point which really sparked my interest. Shall we say. I have over the last year started to change or take quite a few new brands into our lineup, which are manufacturing at home. This is principally because I could see there was going to be a shortage this year. I've worked with some brands who haven't always produced or haven't always been shall we say, great with delivery times. Not that that's a bad thing, but it takes a long time. And if you produce stuff far away, you need to order a load of stuff and then it comes in 6 months. So if there's a problem, you're kind of screwed pretty much. So I think the whole philosophy that Phil has and everything behind was definitely something that I wanted to get on board. So Duncan made the introductions and off we went. Now we have Pembree in Switzerland.
Absolutely, and I guess the big question is, Switzerland, yes, is a big mountain bike market. There's all the big brands are here, very well, represented. Key question here, of course, what was the reception of Pembree in Switzerland?
The reception's been amazing. I think the green aspect is something that people love here. I think people are becoming more and more conscious if they weren't to begin with. And it's something that people are also looking to at the moment. Maybe not so much in our industry, but I think a lot of the other industries, people are questioning, where are my cucumbers coming from? Where's my meat coming from? And wondering, if they can do a part to improve the world we live in. So it's quite interesting because I often tell dealers when I'm speaking to them, I explain the whole history behind it, and they think it's great. They're straight on board and they're like, okay, that sounds really cool. I think that's something we can get behind. Not only being a very noble aspect of what Phil does, but it's also a great selling point. If you can sort of, if someone walks into the shop, I want some pedals, and you can say, we got all of these different ones, but hey, look at these, this company plants a tree for every pedal they produce, and they're 100% carbon neutral, and they come from the UK, so they don't get shipped all the way around the world, or even almost once around the world in some cases, before they end up here. So it's a huge motivator for people. Not to mention the pedals are fantastic as well.
Well, there's something to be said for that. I'm not going to comment on it. And the jury's still out. I've been riding them for 2 months, so I'll give you a detailed review by the summer.
All right. I've been on mine for 3. I must say I'm blown away. They're fantastic. Really grippy. Actually, one of our riders had to stop riding them because they were too grippy for them, so he couldn't do any tricks. His feet kept getting stuck. But I mean, that's a huge plus, and I think anyone who tries them out is going to be super happy with them.
As also a fan of good design, quality components, sustainability, and transparency, actually. Just reading through your website, you see things that stand out that, you would find on other commercial websites, such as words like strength, premium, grip. Now, these are always like the phrases or the terms used by several other brands to describe their products and how they are in some ways superior or the best you can get. And yeah, you're stating them on your website as well. But coming from a stance of being transparent, how does that kind of compete with how other brands are saying the same thing when they may not be the premium bearings or unrivaled grip in their products?
That word transparent is one that I've been using for a very long time. And as a new brand, that there are buzzwords that are obviously used, and they're recognised. They are digested easily. It's important to use the language of the industry. One of the challenges that I've got with Pembree is to communicate the quality of the products in a way that doesn't become overbearing and is not ramming it down people's throats. It would be lovely if I could just get a pair of pedals from another brand and just do them comparison. Let's look at the materials, let's look at the bearings, let's look at this. But I think people just turn off. And so what I'm relying on is reviews within the industry. Riders that are riding for Pembree, the vast majority of people that ride for Pembree, they're not paid. We're a tiny company. They ride them because they like them, and social media is hugely important for me as a company for Pembree, because people are honest, and so they will say if something's good or bad. You see bits and pieces within forums, and has anybody got any reviews of Pembree, and they're starting to come through now. I've tried to knock on a lot of doors of magazines and websites and say, these are our pedals. Would you like to test them? And no, we don't. We don't want to test them because we don't know who you are. Now it's starting to turn the other way, and companies are contacting me and say, "Can we test your pedals?" And so you have to have a language in the website that's recognised and understood. But I think riders will generally do their own research. They'll talk to their mates. They will look in the industry magazines and websites and whatever. They'll make their own decision. There's a lot of nonsense written on websites, and I've tried to be, as you say, transparent as possible. I think the videos that some people have put out there, they're far more powerful than our website. Far more powerful because they're individuals that ride. It's not me.
Yeah, it's. I found the description of your approach to business also very interesting because as a consumer, the way I understand it is, you have several different companies peddling their products. Excuse the pun. And they're all basically selling something that's quite similar. And really it's like a sales first approach. So they have a product, they just want to sell it, and they want to make the most money they can. And it doesn't feel like I'm getting that vibe from you. And I'm not saying that you're using it as a sales pitch, but how do you find that your approach of being transparent is working for you, and how did you decide, or what makes you want to continue to use that approach instead of this just trying to sell as many as you can?
I don't think we have a choice. I think as individuals within the world, we buy stuff, we buy clothes, we buy whatever, cars, and we have a choice to buy whatever we want. As a manufacturer, I don't think I have a choice. I have to be responsible. We as manufacturers have to be more responsible for what we're doing. It was never a marketing approach to go down the sustainability route. It just never was. As it transpires, it's interesting. People like it, but it's never been a marketing approach. Customers have the power to decide what happens to the industry, and I strongly believe, and I've strongly believed this for many years, as a manufacturer of whatever it is, you have to be responsible for the design, how it's going to be used, how it's going to be manufactured, and ultimately how it is recycled at the end of it. And as an industry, and many industries are the same, all companies are bothered about often is the bottom line. Let's get as many units of whatever out as possible this quarter, this year, this financial year. And it was never going to be like that. As a company, taking this approach is not the easiest approach. Being a brand that goes out to the Far East and opens a catalogue and says, can you put our brand on that pedal or stem or whatever, is a far easier approach, and it costs a lot less. But this approach is the right way to do it. It's being responsible for every single component, where it's produced, how it's produced, anything that's manufactured by third-party partners. I know the names of the people that are working on those machines. I know the owners of those companies, and that's really important to me. So I know that those individuals are being supported, their families are being supported. The individuals within those wider companies aren't being treated poorly. The environmental credentials of these companies are available. It's not some third party in a foreign country that I've absolutely no control over. It's just the way my mind works.
Actually, if I could add something to that, in my experience, I think you get two types of businesses in our industry. You've got pile 'em high, sell 'em cheap, which is head over to Taiwan and stick your name on something that's been made already, and then I think you have the sort of niche end, and if you think about it, mountain biking, or the mountain biking we're involved in, is niche. I think people are prepared to pay for a good quality product. And it's something I focus on as well. These days, I'm more into finding the best and working with them, even though there's not a huge amount of, shall we say, stock coming out, but what you're getting is just perfect, and everyone loves it because it's like a Rolls Royce, not a Fiat. Excuse my reference. Sorry, Fiat. But I think it's a good way to go, actually, and I think more people will start to go that way as well.
I would agree with this approach. I think it's there's definitely the power from the consumer to vote with their dollars, and if they want to be also responsible as you're conducting yourself, they can vote with their, put their money where their mouth is, or put their money towards something that they think is going to help not only themselves but someone else, or maybe society. Phil, one thing I still couldn't figure out is, how did you name your pedals?
As in Pembree, or the model name? The
model name. So okay. D2A and R1V.
So,
Actually, can't we hear both?
Exactly. Let's hear both.
Okay, yeah, no worries. So let's back up a little bit. Let's start with the company. Pembree is actually a town near where I live. It's spelt differently, and it was where my middle son was born. So that's where the name came from. I wanted a .com, and I wanted it to be a simple word that's simple to spell, and more importantly, wasn't offensive in another language, which I think a lot of companies do fall short. So that's where the name came from, and yeah, I like it. People seem to remember it, so it's worked. I was keen to just have a single word. Some people do think that the company should be called Pembree Pedals, but that is very limiting from a branding perspective. So that's where Pembree came from. The model names, the R1V is actually a bit of a play on a word, Rivington, and Rivington Pike is where I did my first mountain bike race. So Riv R1V, and that's where that came from. And the D2A is I don't know if I should say this, is actually Difficult Second Album. So this was my second pedal. And it's just a play that I thought was quite funny. There's no other pedals called D2A, and that's where it came from.
Cool.
Brilliant.
Amazing. Very good. We could keep exchanging our theories of rock and roll music, but I think that was a pretty good one. I had a question I'm personally interested in. Also, a fellow podcast guest, Yeti, also asked the question, is how much time you spend researching pedal design. So there seemed to be, let's say in the trail segment, there seems to be kind of an established format of, let's say, 150 millimeters wide by 110 millimeters long. If you look at most of the large-scale test brackets, that's kind of where most of the pedals fall into. But is that a consensus? Is that just because we've always done it like that? Or have you spent some actual time researching the ideal platform size?
So the pedal size is born out of many years riding flat pedals, and I've got big feet, so I'm a UK size 12 or 13. So if you can't make pedals for your own feet, when you've got your own company, I don't know what's the point. And so I've always liked support under my feet. I did some research on the quantity of your weight, the majority of your weight when you're standing up on a downhill bike or you're sprinting or whatever. The vast majority is in your feet. And so you've got to have a supported platform for your weight. If you're doing jumps and whatever, you've got to feel secure and confident. The secret sauce with my pedals is simply to manage the dimensions of those pedals with clearance. There's a historic design of a parallelogram. With pedals, some people love it, but those designs are based out of early 90s. The Atom Lab pedals, the Welgo pedals, and those is designed to allow the pedal to flip back if you land on the edge of your pedal, so you can flip it back. But pedals aren't that thick anymore. We've been able to get the pedal thinner. So having that front edge is not a problem anymore, and so having that platform that supports the front of your foot as well as the back is for me just the perfect balance for your foot. The more riders that are now joining Pembree, they love it. So you do have these ideas of how something should be made or designed, and you test them yourself. You ask your friends to test it and whatever. But when you start to give it to pro riders, and they come back and say, "Yeah, you've absolutely nailed it," that's how you you're on the right track. I think there's a lot of companies, unfortunately, that use the manufacturers in the Far East, and they've designed a pedal, they take it to the Far East, and then those manufacturers go, actually, if you use our extrusion, it'll be cheaper. If you use our bearings and our spindle, it'll be cheaper. And they effectively end up using the same as other brands. So they make the same pedal. Well, I don't do that. I machine from my own material. I design it myself. The spindle is our design. The bearings are specified because they're the ones I wanted in there. And so that has allowed me to build a pedal that I feel is the best in the industry.
Okay. James, can
Yes.
you maybe add a little bit of evidence to that? So, I mean, you obviously you distribute quite a number of different pedal sizes, colors, and shapes. And
and thicknesses.
and thicknesses, and you kind of know where the Pembree pedals slot in on that scale. Can you maybe say, are they more on the popular end, or are there other other pedals that are a bit more popular? Or depends on the rider type.
Yeah, it's an interesting question actually. So I think Pembree pedals are big. I have big feet as well. You know what they say about guys with big feet?
Big socks.
We don't blow over in the wind. Anyway, but I really think it depends on application. So actually, I talked to a dealer today who isn't as tall as me, shall we say, and he absolutely loves them. Really loves them. He says they're perfect, and he also said I don't have the biggest feet, but he says my feet really stick. They really stick on there. They're super comfortable. They're really nice to ride with uphill and downhill. Absolutely tremendous. But I have to say, I think if I look at what I'm selling, it depends very much on application. So I'd say enduro downhill, I think perfect. I think for dirt jumping, they're probably a bit too big, or as one of my riders has told me, too grippy. So I think their application is probably a bit lost in that scene. I think probably when it comes to consumers, price is also a factor. So I think the most pedals we sell are smaller ones, and this could have many different deciding factors. It could be price, it could be the fact shops are saying get these, they'll suit your small feet better. So it's a hard one to answer, but I have to say for me and anyone who I've had on them have said they're spot on. So I don't know if Phil is planning to make a smaller pedal, but I do think there is a gap there as well. And I tell you something that we've been selling a lot of as well at the moment is also kids pedals, which I find astounding. We've had really nice machined kids pedals in. They're not cheap. They didn't used to sell very well, so I'm not sure if this is COVID related. I'm pretty sure it is. I think there's a lot more people out there biking now. Well, I know there's a lot more people out there biking now, and I guess kids bikes come with really cheap plastic pedals normally. And so I think there's definitely potential there.
I think the reality of any product, it does have its limitations, and you're not going to be able to have a literally one size fits all. If you have big feet, you're going to need big pedals. If you've got tiny feet, big pedals might not suit you. But I think with the D2A, I think I've been able to create something that a lot of people really love. And a guy posted something the other day. It feels like he's clipped in. I've had customers say that the pins are too grippy. I've had customers that say the pins aren't long enough. They want something like javelins sitting on, But you just can't. You can't please everybody. But as the brand expands and grows, what I'd like to be able to do is offer more products for everybody. But as I said, one of the challenges, our pins, they're not made in the Far East. They're made 20 miles down the road. And so those pins are significantly more expensive to make. They're made of stainless steel than others that are on other brands. So being able to change the size of them is not as straightforward as just changing a catalogue number. So it's just something to be aware of.
You could always just file them down a bit.
Yeah, you could do.
or just go the Bryson way and train your neuroplasticity and remove the pins on one side of your pedals and keep them on the other.
It works.
Do you put some soap on them before you go out riding as well?
Coat them in Pam.
I have to say, I do find, I think pedal size is a bit of a misconception. For me, it's hard to say because before I've sold one brand and they were very popular as dirt jump pedals and they were the dirt jump pedals. So I think that probably has more to do with the scene than or the application rather than people going into bike shops and getting fitted, shall we say. But I do think it's a bit of a misconception, and I do think it probably would help if dealers were also sort of saying, no, you can get larger pedals. If you get the right pedals, you'll be fine, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just an additional tool in the toolbox, right? To for bike fit, and that the same as it is on the roadside, where you have different pedal systems from cleats to no cleats to different platform sizes to different angular setups, etc. And the same is true on the mountain bike side. The same is true with flat pedals. And again, to echo what Yeti texted me earlier, is like, why does it make sense that a guy like me, so he's over 2 meters tall and weighs 100 kilos and wears a shoe size 48, uses the same pedal as my girlfriend, who's only 1 meter 60 and probably half the weight and half the shoe size. So that doesn't really make sense. So I think more options are always better, and for everyone to be able to find the right fit for their riding style.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it does boil down to the availability of extrusions in the Far East. So they're using the same extrusion. You can't make those extrusions any smaller, and that's the challenge.
Okay. One thing I'm also interested in is this green premium. We've talked a bit with Robin before. It's come up quite a bit in other conversations, and it's always that taking the sustainability route, taking the greener product is always the more expensive option. Always costs a little bit more than their non-green products. So, for example, take your pedals. If they're not made sustainable, then you could make them much cheaper. So why are you not doing that? So I just wonder, in general, kind of what the experience has been with Pembree. Are people seeking out the product, or are they, they want to have the Pembree product, or they're willing to pay X amount, and then it's nice that it's also green?
Well, I think, like I said, the product needs to stand alone, irrespective of its green credentials, and so the product needs to work. I think for me, if someone has the choice to buy a green product versus a non-green product, they would always go green. I think if you were to say to somebody, right, you've got a product here that costs 100, whatever your local currency is, which is green, and here's one that's 75, it's exactly the same, it's non-green. I think that's a very different conversation when it comes down to money. I think for Pembree, this is not it's not been a choice. It is something that has always been part of Pembree, and the infrastructure from our processes, procedures, the factory that's powered on wind and solar power solely. It's from the ground up, so we've been able to go down that route, and the ultimate goal is to be able to build a successful company that is producing products that are comparable from a price point to others within the industry, and hopefully they will continue to sell. People will like them. But I think that green premium, I get a lot of people ask me about other components, other accessories. A guy contacted me not long ago and said, "Is there a company that makes a recycled material helmet?" And so people are seeking out to find greener alternatives. We use bikes in nature. If we don't start buying more responsibly, that nature won't be there. And so I think a choice that people have to be able to buy a more sustainably manufactured or more responsibly manufactured product, I think generally people will do it. Price is obviously a consideration for everybody to a certain point. But some people will never buy Pembree pedals because they're too expensive, and that is not something that I can do anything about. Because everything is made in this factory, it's more expensive to make things in the UK than it is the Far East. It absolutely is. But I want to give people the choice to be able to purchase mountain bike components that are more responsibly made.
It all just sounds too good to be true. A green from the ground up approach, quality components that'll hopefully last you a long time. A sustainable approach. It's sort of kind of like also this whole marketing thing that's shoved down our throats day in, day out, magazines, YouTube, people on the street, you name it. It's like, it's just turning into buzzwords, like you said. How can we help perpetuate that, and how can we bring more people on board, manufacturers as well as consumers?
The power, as I've said, is in the consumer's hands. It absolutely is. If people, there's lots of examples of where companies have been boycotted for whatever reason, and it's a very, very powerful way to make change. If people stop buying certain components for whatever reason, then there will be an immediate pivot to change the way we're doing things. But the way, unfortunately, we currently have an industry that is so full of components that are made in unknown factories in countries that are potentially not being as transparent or ecologically minded as others. The challenges with sustainable manufacturing will continue. They will continue, and they will continue until people start changing their buying habits. And that's it in a nutshell.
So as a consumer, how can I seek out and discover and find these manufacturers that are manufacturing sustainably, that are giving back, that are being transparent? How do I decipher that from the, all the fuzz that's everyone's creating?
Go to biketheworld.ch.
The reality is there isn't many. There isn't many brands that have an environmental policy. There isn't many brands that are recycled. Their products that are recyclable. The simple fact is, the vast majority of bike frames are made of carbon fiber. It's not recyclable. It can be repurposed into tire levers, but there's only so many tire levers you can make. And so the education of our industries is hugely important. Aluminium isn't a perfect material, but what I'm trying to do is draw attention to the fact that it is better than composite plastic pedals. Unknown plastic that you can't recycle. And this is the challenge that I want to draw attention to. I mentioned earlier before the podcast that I've got a project about a bike that I'm wanting to try and draw attention to. Where is your bike made? I've got some incredible brands that are supporting this project. But it's a challenge. It's a real challenge to find brands that actually make their own stuff in a responsible way. So we have to put pressure on the brands we love to change the way they're doing things.
So to your knowledge, what brands are using an environmental policy?
There's some really well-known brands. Shimano, they do a lot of their own manufacturing. They've got that control. You don't get that big without controlling your own destiny. They use a lot of their own manufacturing facilities, which is great. A lot of their products are made of aluminium, which again is great. The likes of Push Industries in Colorado, the suspension company, Chris King, again absolute legends of the industry. Hope in the UK, very, very good. Piger Bikes. Obviously, I know Piger very well. They've brought their manufacturing back to South Africa, so they can control that whole manufacturing process. There's a lot of manufacturers that do their own thing. Unfortunately, the big brands, for the vast majority of them, get stuff made by third parties.
Okay, maybe to bring it back to James. Of course, we've talked quite a bit about this theme of conscious buying before, but I mean, of course, some time has passed since we had those conversations, and how has 2021 been so far in terms of the uptake of that theme? Has that continued into 2021 or?
It certainly has. Actually, it's continued and pretty much gone through the roof. I took in a lot of brands last year, but I've noticed the brands which are producing more sustainably are becoming more and more interesting. There's several reasons. Lead times are way less. I think one great thing with what Phil's doing as well, if there is an issue or there happens to be an issue or he has to improve something, he can do it straight away and it's done next batch, and it's rolled out. I think that's something you don't see with mass production or products produced in the Far East. I've noticed there seems to be a lot more interest in those sort of brands as well. I've noticed, I have 4 actually now. I've got Pembree, Industry 9, Piger, and We Are One. We Are One do manufacture carbon rims. So they're not working with metals, but they lay everything up in Canada. It's built there in their warehouse, and I'm just noticing a general interest in that sort of product. Actually, I think a few people have also started to, when it comes to manufacturing, thought, okay, does it make sense to head over to the Far East and walk into some 6 million square meter floor factory and have a look what they got and see what they can do, or should we try and do it ourselves? Should we try and build something spectacular and build it right here in our backyard, or as Englishmen like to do, build stuff in their sheds? So I do think there's a shift happening. I think it could have something to do with the fact that delivery times for mass-produced products are obscene at the moment. I was trying to get an SLX drivetrain today. That was fun. I started with 12 speed, went down to 11 speed, so now I'm back on 10 speed. So I'm all for it, and I think these sort of ideas and these brands I've been working with have really helped me excel, actually. I also do work with brands who do produce in the Far East, and I've noticed it's tougher to deal with. I think there's some very big players down there who can get in front of the queue because they have the means or the liquidity to do so, which puts everyone else, it puts boutique brands sort of on the back burner. So these people are all waiting. So everyone's waiting, and I think if we talk about boutique brands, I think it's one of the best things you can do is start manufacturing at home. I know it's expensive, but there's the quality, there's the quality control, there's flexibility, there's a lot of plus sides that go with it. I mean, if we go back to cars, I mean, if you look at very high-end car manufacturers, they build everything at home as well. And I noticed that many years ago that I think I'd rather go in that direction and make really or sell really nice products as opposed to just try and buy in as much shit as I can and sell it as cheaply as possible. And yeah, it all works in the whole sustainability factor, I think marketing wise as well. I think you can do a lot if you're not taking part in this sort of how can you say this producing loads and loads of
Mass
handlebars.
production.
Well, yeah, mass production. We got them in any color you want.
All of the colors.
I think it's much nicer to say, hey, we've only got 3 colors, but hey, they're the best you can buy and they're great to ride. I think I think it's the way to go, especially for a industry like mountain biking.
Okay. Well, there's a little thought experiment here. I mean, we've talked about, the benefits of local production and having your, all your fabrication technology in-house. What do you think is the scope to work together with other, let's say, local manufacturing brands? So let's say you produce pedals in the UK, and you could maybe work together with someone that also CNCs bike parts like frames in Finland, and you agree on a certain quality standard, and they ship you their CNC codes to the UK. You produce their frames, and you ship your pedal codes over to Finland, and they produce your pedals. Cut out the transport.
I think the theory is wonderful. I think the reality is very, very different. The shipping the code is the simple thing because it's just essentially a load of coordinates that are sent over. But you've got to have the right tools, and more importantly, you've got to have the right fixturing. Especially with something like a bike frame, it would have a significant amount of fixturing to keep it still. It's as important as the tools that are being used to machine. I think the idea of keeping the transportation costs down, I think is a wonderful idea. I think that could be something in the future with additive manufacturing, where the fixturing is less important. But at the moment, with something like additive manufacturing, like 3D printing and those kind of things that they're not accurate enough. So I couldn't make my pedals out of 3D additive manufacturing because the tolerances on the bearings are too tight, and they're just not able to be done on those kind of technologies yet. But it's improving all the time. I do foresee a world where the door handle breaks on your in your house, and you're sent a file by the manufacturer, and you print it at home. That would be amazing. You can do it there and then, but we are a long, long way from that. So I think it has some merits, but I just don't think practically it would work.
I've got another step in this thought experiment that I'd like to explore, and that's, Phil, what would it be for Pembree to take that next step in creating like an additional value in terms of sustainability and while holding the same quality that you already produce.
You what? Say that again.
So what kind of things can Pembree do, or a manufacturer can do at this point to hold the same type of quality in their product while increasing the sustainability? As an example, what could Pembree do at this stage? What would be the next step for Pembree? Or maybe an ideal scenario is something you want to talk about.
Yeah, I think my goal for the company is that kind of 365 degree life cycle. So at the moment, touch wood, there isn't any of Pembree products that are at the end of their life, but I have the means and the infrastructure in place to bring those products back to Pembree for complete recycling. And I think that is something that companies could do. Whether they choose to do that is another matter. But I think that is something that I would is on the cards as we get older and some of the products will become end of life. So that's something for the future. What I do at the moment, individuals that have bought Pembree pedals often ask about recycling of old components. I'll welcome any steel and aluminium component stems. I've got boxes full of them that go to our recycling partner. And so I think that is something that is happening within Pembree that not a lot of people know about, but it's also something that other companies should do, but they don't.
Okay, we are getting towards the end of our time here, so we would like to close out the show with a couple of questions that we ask all of our guests, if that's okay. I mean, we've gone through the questions with James, so we're going to spare us those, but it's going to be very interesting to hear your take on those. So, question number 1, tell us about the bike that got you first really, really stoked on riding.
It was a rally grifter. These were absolutely indestructible. It had 3 speeds. It was kind of like a grip shift type of thing. There was no rear mech. It was incredible. It was made of steel. It weighed like a small car. It was brilliant. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It was part of the reason I got really good at BMX, because I was dragging this thing around. My legs just grew and grew to be able to move this bike, and I just absolutely loved it. It was brilliant, and it was, as I say, it was completely indestructible. That was the first bike that I can remember that I absolutely loved. It was brilliant.
Awesome, very good. Second one, imagine you're Harry Skidini, bike magician extraordinaire, and you can make riding a bike more awesome for anyone by the stroke of a magic dropper post. What would you do?
I've thought about this, and I think that it's not going to be anything other than gearing. The gearing on a mountain bike, the rear mech, effectively hasn't changed in 100 years, and I would change that. It's just, I've got different components on my bikes, different companies, and it works really well. It absolutely, the gearing can be really, really smooth, but ultimately you've got such an exposed cassette in a muddy environment with a chain, and I would just, if I could use that magic wand, the gearing would go. It would just be a completely enclosed system that wouldn't have any mechanical issues at all. That's what I would do, absolutely. And get rid of cabling, the whole lot. That would be brilliant.
Fantastic. We could get on board with that.
I'll let you know how I get on.
So if we're having bikes without cables, without hoses, how are we braking?
Yeah,
How are we creating our
braking's going to be the critical issue there. I think the other components have already been dealt with.
Well, I think the psychology. I've seen demonstrations within the car industry where you are. I think they call it driving by wire. There is no direct link between your pedal under your foot and the brakes. And so I think from a psychology perspective in mountain biking and any cycling, I think you have to see a cable going into the brake just from a confidence perspective. But I've seen examples of wireless braking, but I just don't think people's minds would take it.
Okay, let's go with the wireless braking. And
we could all just go fixed gear.
So there are several solutions to control the wheel speed, which is very key in order to create a great skid. So maybe you can describe using your electronic fly-by-wire, ride-by-wire. How are we creating a great skid?
Well, I think that there's nothing in it that's widely different than what we'd have now. We'd just simply have a brake lever that was electronic, maybe a Bluetooth type approach. It would grab that disc brake beautifully, and you could skid as long as you wanted.
Actually, I had a large hesitation asking this question. As I was perusing the social media this morning, I saw an article from Pink Bike about how top 6 or so things that trail builders hate. And number 1 was that riders skid down the trails, but mostly really due to inability to control the bike. But we're talking about some next level stuff here, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It would be incredible.
Okay. Well, Phil, thanks again for your time and for sitting down with us tonight. This was really, really cool. If listeners have any questions or want to learn more about you, your pedals, and what you're up to, where can they find you?
Well, our main social media is Instagram, so it's Pembree UK, and the website with a lot more detail on how we do things is pembree.com.
James, maybe for the first time listeners, the guys that hear you for the first time today, you want to say where they can find you?
Of course, Bike the World, biketheworld.ch, and our Instagram address is the same.
Nice one. Well, thank you guys so much for your time. This is really cool, and we'll hopefully see you out on the trails at some stage in the future. All right. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Ciao.
Ciao.